We were on the road, driving through Arizona's scenic backroads. Willow and I had decided on a long weekend getaway, a much-needed escape from our hectic lives. The plan was simple: drive through the Southwest, camp under the stars, and unwind. Our destination for tonight was a campground near Flagstaff. The open road, a playlist of our favorite songs, and the promise of a beautiful sunset. What could be better? I was behind the wheel, my girlfriend Willow my co-pilot, managing the music and handing out snacks. She was also the official map reader, although these days that mostly involved zooming in and out of Google Maps on her phone. This afternoon, however, our conversation had drifted from work stress and family updates to the comfortable silence only couples together for years truly appreciate. It was a perfect day. The Arizona landscape stretched endlessly around us. Rocky terrain, sparse vegetation, and a sky impossibly bright blue. We were far from the main highway now, cruising along a two-lane road that had seen better days. In a way, it added to the adventure, or at least that's what we told ourselves. "Turn right up ahead," Willow said, consulting her phone. "Looks like a shortcut." "Why not?" I replied, signaling and turning onto an even smaller road. This one was more rugged, filled with twists and turns. It was an interesting detour, offering new sights and a sense of isolation that was both exciting and a little intimidating. But we were adventurers, at least for this weekend, so we pressed on. After a few miles, dark clouds began to gather on the horizon. It was unexpected. The weather forecast had promised clear skies. "Looks like we might get some rain," Willow noted, a hint of concern in her voice. "Maybe it'll pass," I said optimistically. But even as I spoke, the first drop started hitting the windshield, quickly escalating into a downpour. That's when the car made a sputtering sound. I pressed the gas pedal, but it was unresponsive. We rolled to a stop, the engine completely dead. The dashboard lights flickered and went out, leaving us stranded miles from the nearest town, just as a thunderstorm raged. "Great," Willow muttered, pulling out her phone, only to find there was no service. The rain intensified, hammering the car's roof and turning the dirt road into mud. So we sat tight, hoping for a break in either the weather or our luck. After what felt like an endless wait, headlights pierced through the sheet of rain. A car pulled up beside us. The window rolled down, and rain briefly sprayed into the car. "Looks like you folks could use some help," said the older man in the driver's seat, smiling as if rescuing stranded tourists was part of his daily routine. "I'm Theodore," he said with a large smile. "Hi, Theodore. I'm Jasper, and this is Willow," I responded. "You have no idea how relieved we are to see someone. Our car just died." "Clearly not the best day for a drive," Theodore observed. "Why don't you both hop in? We don't live far from here." I glanced at Theodore's passenger seat and saw a young woman. Her eyes barely rose from her lap, avoiding contact with us. Theodore introduced her. "This is my wife, Iris." "Hello, Iris," Willow said. But Iris didn't respond. She just nodded almost imperceptibly, staring ahead. Something about her demeanor raised subtle alarm bells in my head. Theodore sensed the tension and jumped in. "She doesn't talk much, but don't take it personally." We accepted Theodore's offer to stay at his house. We didn't really have other options with the rain still coming down in sheets. Fixing the car wasn't possible. "Thanks, Theodore. We really appreciate it," I said as Willow and I climbed into the back seat. "No trouble at all," he assured us. As we drove, The atmosphere in the car was tense. The rain hit the roof and windshield in a relentless torrent, as if trying to drown out the awkward silence. This rain really came out of nowhere. Willow tried to break the silence. Yeah, the weather around here is full of surprises, Theodore replied, focusing on the road. The windshield wipers struggled to keep up with the rain, moving back and forth at full speed. Iris sat quietly in the front seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She didn't turn to look at us, but I caught her stealing a nervous glance in the rearview mirror. "So, where are you folks headed?" Theodore asked, his eyes fixed on the road as he navigated through the downpour. "We were planning on camping near Flagstaff," Willow replied, doing her best to sound cheerful. "Looks like nature had other plans," Theodore chuckled. "Oh, Arizona weather can be unpredictable, that's for sure. Do you visit often?" "No, first time," I answered. "We wanted a break from city life, you know. But instead, we get a broken car in a storm." "Unfortunate, but you're safe now," Theodore said, focusing intently on the road. "We don't get many visitors out here. It's pretty isolated." "Yeah, we noticed," Willow added. "Do you live far from here?" "Not far. Another 10 minutes and we'll be there," Theodore replied. Iris continued to sit in silence, her eyes now staring out the side window. I noticed her grip tighten on her handbag, which she had clutched tightly since we got in the car. She seemed like she wanted to say something, but held back. "Your house must be pretty secluded then," I remarked, trying to keep the conversation going and learn more about our unexpected hosts. "It is," Theodore said, his tone dropping a notch. "Peaceful most of the time. Good place to be away from it all." The car continued to slice through the curtain of rain. Despite Theodore's reassuring words, an undercurrent of tension filled the car. Willow and I exchanged another glance. Words weren't necessary. We both knew that while we might be out of the rain, we weren't out of the woods. Something was off. After a while, we eventually pulled up to a large, isolated house. It was clear the house had seen better days. The paint was peeling from the wood, and the front yard was overgrown. Theodore parked the car in the driveway, which was little more than a patch of gravel. As we stepped out, I saw a few other cars that looked like they hadn't been driven in years. We followed Theodore inside, and the first thing I noticed was the layer of dust that seemed to blanket the furniture. It was dark inside, too. Only a few lamps were on, casting shadows on the worn upholstery and faded rugs. Iris immediately headed for the kitchen. "Please make yourselves at home," Theodore said, gesturing toward the old sofas in the living room. "We really appreciate this, Theodore," Willow said, doing her best to sound upbeat. "We didn't expect to find help at this hour." "No trouble at all," Theodore said, as he picked up a pile of old magazines from one of the sofas and set them on a coffee table. He also grabbed an old remote control and placed it next to the TV. "You have a lot of space here," Willow observed, trying to initiate some small talk. "Yes, it's an old family house," Theodore replied, avoiding any more details. "It must be nice having all this room," I chimed in, "especially in such a secluded area." "Oh, the quiet is what makes it worthwhile," Theodore said again, skirting specifics. "What do you do for a living?" Willow asked, a little more directly this time. "A bit of this and that," Theodore responded, waving his hand vaguely. "Keeps the bills paid, you know." "So, just the two of you live here?" I inquired, looking around at the empty, dust-covered room. "For the most part, yes," Theodore said. His answer was quick, almost rehearsed. The conversation hit a dead end. each of us picking up on the tension. Theodore had an answer for everything, but said almost nothing. It was like he was prepared for this sort of questioning, ready to dodge anything that might reveal too much. Willow, sensing the growing awkwardness, tried to involve Iris. "Do you need help with anything in the kitchen, Iris?" "I'm fine," Iris said. Her reply was quick, almost as if she had been expecting the question. Her eyes met the floor rather than any of us, as Iris retreated further into the kitchen. The sound of pots and pans clinking provided a backdrop to a silence that was starting to feel heavy. Willow and I exchanged a look, a silent agreement that something didn't add up. Theodore finally broke the quiet. "Can I offer you something to drink? We have water, soda, some old beers." "Water is fine," I responded, still scanning the room, noting the old family photos on the walls, people who seemed to be disconnected from the life Theodore and Iris were living now. Theodore went to the kitchen and returned with 3 glasses of water. He handed them out, his hand slightly shaking as he did so. I took a sip and locked eyes with Willow. Our gaze confirmed it. We were both uneasy, picking up on the fact that this wasn't just some ordinary home of a Good Samaritan. Something was off, but without concrete evidence, we couldn't quite figure out what it was. Theodore tried to steer the conversation towards safe topics, asking us if we'd seen any interesting animals on our trip and commenting on the unpredictability of desert weather. Yet, he artfully avoided answering our more probing questions. His skill at dodging details made the room feel even more uncomfortable. "Would you two like to stay for dinner?" Theodore suddenly asked, disrupting the awkward silence that had settled. "Iris is making stew." "That sounds lovely," Willow replied, her face wearing a forced smile. She turned to me for a split second, and I caught a fleeting expression in her eyes. I recognized that look. It was a look that said, "Stay alert, something's not right here." That glance reinforced what I'd been feeling. We were both on edge, sensing that there was more to this situation than met the eye. We were stuck in this strange house, sharing space with a man who treated straightforward questions like a game of dodgeball. Iris remained a mystery. Her behavior didn't seem to be that of a typical host, and it added another layer of questions to an already complex puzzle. We were reliant, for the moment, on the hospitality of 2 near strangers who seemed to have secrets. But what could they be hiding? Theodore looked between us as if to gauge our reactions, his eyes briefly flickering to Iris in the kitchen before returning to us. "It'll be ready soon," he said, almost as if reassuring himself more than us. Willow nodded, taking a sip from her glass of water. "Thank you, Theodore. We appreciate the hospitality." "Of course," Theodore replied, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. It was becoming more clear that hospitality might come at a price here, and we were both increasingly concerned about what that price might be. We sat down at a large wooden dining table that looked like it hadn't been used in years. Iris brought out a pot of stew and set it down in the center of the table. She served us each a bowl, and then sat down at the far end of the table, away from Theodore. The stew looked hearty but basic: meat, potatoes, and some vegetables floating in a thick broth. "So, how long have you two been together?" Theodore asked as he picked up his spoon. The question felt a bit too personal, given his unwillingness to share anything about his own life. "About 10 years, Willow answered, glancing at me as if to say, "Keep the conversation going, but tread carefully." "That's quite a while," Theodore commented, but his tone lacked genuine interest. "You must know each other very well by now." We do, I said, tasting the stew. It was decent but lacked any real flavor. And you and Iris, how long have you been married? Theodore looked at Iris, who was nervously pushing her food around her plate. Oh, not too long, he replied vaguely. I noticed Iris's hand tremor slightly before she set her spoon down untouched. Iris still hadn't spoken much. She barely looked up, and her eyes never met anyone's gaze. It was like she was present in body, but not in spirit. I caught a glimpse of a small tattoo on her wrist as she adjusted her sleeve. It was a simple but distinct symbol, one I couldn't readily identify. Oh, what's that tattoo, if you don't mind me asking? Willow inquired, trying to engage Iris in the conversation. Iris looked visibly startled, almost as if she'd forgotten she had it. It's nothing, she muttered, pulling her sleeve back down. It looks interesting, I added. But Iris only shook her head, avoiding further discussion. As we continued to eat, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. Theodore was too guarded. His answers were too scripted. Iris was more than just shy or reserved. She seemed scared. What was really going on here? Both Willow and I knew we needed to be cautious, but we also knew that we couldn't ignore our instincts. This was more than just an awkward dinner. It was a situation that we needed to understand, and fast. After we finished the meal, Theodore stood up and started collecting the dishes. Let me take care of this, he said, piling the plates and bowls onto a large tray. Iris rose too, but he waved her off. You've done enough, dear. Why don't you go and rest? Iris nodded, her face showing a mix of relief and apprehension, and exited the room. Theodore carried the dishes into the kitchen, leaving Willow and me alone in the dining room for a moment. This is really strange, Jasper, Willow whispered as soon as Theodore was out of earshot. Something is definitely off here. Did you notice Iris's behavior? And what about that tattoo? I did, I replied, keeping my voice low. And Theodore is evasive about almost everything. We need to figure out what's going on and get out of here as soon as we can. And before we can say anything more, I added, Theodore returns with 3 mugs of coffee, setting them down on the table. He sits back down, acting as if this is a normal social visit. The room is filled with the strong aroma of coffee, but the scent does nothing to lighten the heavy atmosphere. As we sip the hot beverage, our eyes meet over the rim of our mugs. Both of us are on high alert. We know we need to act, and soon, but for now, we're stuck in this strange house with even stranger hosts, sipping coffee as if everything is normal. Theodore took a sip of his coffee and then stood up. It's been a long day, and I'm sure you're both tired. Why don't I show you to your room? Actually, I said, seizing the opportunity. We left our phones in the car. Mind if we go get them? Of course, go ahead, Theodore replied, but his eyes narrowed slightly. Would you like a flashlight? It's quite dark outside. That would be great, thank you, Willow responded. Theodore went to a drawer and handed me a flashlight, the weight of his gaze never leaving us as we stepped outside. The rain had stopped, but the ground was wet and muddy. The flashlight illuminated the path back to our car. I unlocked the car, and we quickly grabbed our phones. Check if you have signal, I whispered to Willow. She shook her head. No bars. My phone showed the same. Let's head back, but be ready for anything, I said. We walked back toward the house, but this time I noticed a side door slightly ajar, leading into what looked like a basement. We should check it out, Willow suggested. and I nodded. We made our way quietly to the door and slipped inside. The room was about the size of a two-car garage, but it felt much more cramped, dimly lit by a single hanging light bulb. The low wattage cast long shadows on the floor and walls, making the space feel even more confined. The walls were a dull, weathered gray, and there was a musty smell that hit us as soon as we stepped inside. A mix of dampness, dust, and something metallic that I couldn't quite place. Stacked against the walls were boxes, some taped shut, others open and overflowing with random items like clothes, shoes, and even children's toys. The floor was cold concrete, slightly slick with some sort of residue. I noticed stains that looked suspiciously like rust or dried blood. The room had a heavy, stagnant air that felt oppressive, almost as if the walls were closing in on us. In one corner of the room, we saw what really grabbed our attention. A makeshift wooden table covered with stacks of passports from various countries, ID cards, and small piles of foreign currency. God, what does that smell? Willow said softly. I don't know, but it's bad, I replied, my eyes still scanning the room. Willow moved closer to the table with the passports. Look at all these. They're from everywhere. Canada, Mexico, Japan. What the hell's going on here? She whispered. I can't say for sure, but none of it looks good, I said. Next to the table was a metal shelving unit filled with personal belongings. There were bags of different sizes and styles, from backpacks to small purses, all looking like they'd been quickly shoved onto the shelves. The bags were unzipped, their contents partially spilling out. Wallets, cosmetics, and even photographs. Willow picked up a photo from one of the bags, a picture of a family. They have entire lives, families, and they end up here, I said, feeling my heart race. I don't even want to think about what that means. We need to find a way out and alert the authorities. On the far side of the room, there was a single, narrow window. It was barred and covered in a layer of grime so thick that even if the light outside were stronger, it wouldn't penetrate this dark space. We need to leave, and quickly, Willow said, looking at the barred window. Think we could break that and climb out? With those bars? Not a chance. We'll have to go back the way we came and figure something else out, I responded. Okay, we need to get out of this room now before Theodore or Iris find us in here, Willow urged. You're right, I agreed. Let's move, and let's be quick, but quiet about it. We can't afford to get caught in here. Suddenly, we heard footsteps approaching. We quickly turned off the flashlight and hid behind a large cabinet. Theodore's voice was low, but clear. The walls of the room seemed to amplify the sound, making it easy to understand what he was saying despite our distance from the door. No, it's just a couple whose car broke down. Yes, I'll take care of it. No, she won't be a problem, he said into the phone. The words sent a chill down my spine, solidifying the dread that had been building since we found this room. The sound of the phone clicking shut was deafening in the silence that followed. Theodore's footsteps grew fainter, indicating that he was walking away from the room. With each step that put distance between him and us, I felt a tiny bit of the tension lift. But it was replaced by a sinking realization. We weren't just dealing with some shady characters. We were caught in a dangerous, life-threatening situation. Willow and I exchanged glances. The weight of our situation pressed down on us. We were cornered, but there was a glimmer of hope. Theodore's truck was our only real chance at escape. We had to get the keys, and that meant going back into the lion's den. We need his truck keys, I whispered, my voice shaky. Willow nodded, her face set in a grim expression. We knew this was risky, possibly even more dangerous than staying hidden. But the alternative was unthinkable. "We can't leave without the keys," Willow whispered back. "We need to get back into the house and find them." I took a deep breath, feeling the damp, musty air fill my lungs. It was far from refreshing, but it was necessary. "Okay, let's go. We need to be fast but quiet. Theodore might not be the only one we have to worry about," I said. "Right," Willow agreed, her eyes scanning the room one last time, as if hoping for another option to magically appear. We carefully stepped out from behind the cabinet and moved toward the door, listening intently. Silence. Theodore's footsteps were long gone, and we hadn't heard any other sounds. That was good, but also somewhat unsettling. We had no idea where he was or what he was doing. Regardless, we needed to take this chance. As we exited the room, I felt an overwhelming urge to lock it behind us, to somehow contain the dark secrets it held. But that wasn't an option. Not now. We crept back into the main part of the house, each step a mix of caution and urgency. Our eyes met for a split second, a silent agreement passing between us. We were committed to this course of action, for better or worse. Now back in the living area, we started looking for the keys. We needed to find them quickly, get to the truck, and drive as far away from this place as possible. Our lives might very well depend on it. I checked the coffee table and the small cabinet near the TV, while Willow peeked into the kitchen. We were moving as silently as we could, trying to make no noise that would give us away. Just as I was about to check the hallway table, Theodore reappeared. "Ah, there you are," Theodore exclaimed, startling both of us. "The rain seems to have stopped, but those roads are in dreadful shape. No tow truck could get through until morning." For a moment, I was at a loss for words. The immediate need to escape was conflicting with the apparent need to act normal. Yeah, that makes sense," Willow finally said, forcing a smile. "Thank you for letting us stay. It's very kind of you." "Of course, it's no trouble at all," Theodore replied, though there was a tightness in his voice. "Why don't you follow me? I'll show you to your room." I shot Willow a look that I hoped conveyed caution and agreement simultaneously. With no other choice, we followed Theodore down a narrow hallway, adorned with old family photographs that seemed out of place given the atmosphere. Finally, he opened a door to a small guest bedroom. It was modest, furnished with an aging bed and a faded rug. A small window overlooked the dark expanse outside. Its curtains were pulled tightly shut. "Here you are. The bathroom is just down the hall," Theodore said, gesturing vaguely in the direction from which we came. "I hope you find everything to your liking." "Thank you, Theodore," I said, my voice almost a whisper. "We appreciate it." With that, Theodore closed the door behind him. As he left, Willow and I were alone again. Willow and I looked at each other, both realizing we needed to escape this perilous situation. After enduring an agonizing period of listening to Theodore's footsteps pace around the house, we finally heard them fade into the distance. Seizing the moment, we tiptoed out of the guest room, our movements as quiet as possible. Our eyes locked in a shared understanding. Our main objective was to find the keys to Theodore's truck. As I led the way, the dim light from a nearby lamp barely illuminated the narrow hallway. My eyes darted from one shadowy corner to another, keen to pick up any signs of movement or hidden figures. My ears were just as alert, tuned to catch the faintest of sounds that could indicate danger. The air was thick with tension, amplified by the silence that hung heavily around us. We advanced cautiously toward the living room, each step calculated to make as little noise as possible. Our hope was to find the keys there, or at least some hint that could lead us to them. Just as we neared the entrance to the living room, Iris unexpectedly emerged from the kitchen. She looked shaken, her face drained of color, and her eyes showing a complex blend of fear and determination. Her sudden appearance caught us off guard, but it was clear from her expression that she was here to help, not hinder our plans. "You need to leave now," she whispered, her voice urgent and barely audible. My heart skipped a beat. "I know where Theodore keeps the truck keys," Willow said, looking at Iris, then back at me. "Are you sure?" Iris nodded. "I'm positive. I can't explain everything now, but you have to trust me." I could see Willow's hesitant look, but time was not on our side. "Let's do it," I said. Iris led us through the house, and eventually we reached a small office. Papers were scattered all over an old wooden desk, and filing cabinets stood half open, as though someone had been frantically searching for something. A bulky old computer sat on one side of the desk, its screen black and collecting dust. A web of cables snaked from it across the floor, connecting to a printer and other outdated peripherals. Iris appeared to know exactly where she was going. She bypassed the mess, stepping carefully over a pile of old books and sidestepping a leaning tower of cardboard boxes. Her eyes were locked onto a rusty filing cabinet tucked away in a dark corner of the room. As she reached it, I noticed the labels on the drawers were faded and peeling, making it hard to decipher what they might have once indicated. Without hesitation, Iris pulled open the second drawer from the top. It creaked loudly, the sound grating on my already frayed nerves. She shuffled through folders and an assortment of loose objects that I couldn't quite identify from my angle. My heart was pounding, my senses were heightened, and every second that passed felt like an eternity. Finally, her hand emerged, holding a single key. As Iris held it out to us, her eyes met mine. She didn't have to say a word. We both understood that this key was our ticket out, and that time was running out. We needed to act, and we needed to act now. "These are the truck keys," she said, handing them to me. "You can get out through the back door. It'll be quicker, and Theodore won't see you leave." "What about you?" Willow asked, concern filling her eyes. Iris looked away for a moment, and then back at us. "I'm coming with you. I have to get out of here too." Suddenly, the sound of Theodore's voice echoed throughout the house. "Iris, where are you?" he called. My pulse quickened. I could practically feel the seconds ticking away, each one bringing Theodore closer to discovering our plans. Iris locked eyes with us, her gaze sharpened by the very real danger we were all in. "We have to go now," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper, but imbued with a kind of urgency that made it impossible to misunderstand. No one argued. This wasn't a moment for debate. I clutched the keys in my hand, my knuckles lightening from the grip. Iris opened a drawer near the back door and swiftly grabbed a flashlight. She flicked it on briefly to test it and then switched it off again. We moved quickly to the back door. Each step was a calculated risk. The door was old and its hinges were worn, but I eased it open with as much care as possible, minimizing the noise. The door creaked softly, but it didn't matter. We were committed now. As we stepped outside, the night air wrapped around us like a cloak. It was cold, with a wetness that seeped into our clothes. But right now, it felt invigorating rather than uncomfortable. The grass underfoot was damp from the earlier rain. Each step produced a soft squelching sound. None of us were deterred by this. Our eyes were set on the goal. Theodore's truck, A dark silhouette parked a fair distance from the house. Iris took the lead. I could tell she was wrestling with emotions, fears, and decisions that had likely been years in the making. As soon as we reached the gravel driveway, we broke into a sprint toward the truck. My breaths came in quick, shallow gasps, yet my mind was keenly focused on the goal. As we reached the truck, I fumbled briefly with the keys before finding the right one. I unlocked the doors, and we piled in, me in the driver's seat, Willow beside me, and Iris quickly climbing into the back. As soon as the doors were shut, I jammed the key into the ignition. There was a momentary pause, a split second where I wondered if the engine would strand us. Then, with a growl, the truck roared to life. I glanced at the rearview mirror and caught Iris's eyes. She was staring out the window, and her expression was hard to read. A cocktail of relief and nervousness. Revving the engine, I took one last look at the house. Gripping the steering wheel firmly, I stepped on the gas pedal. The truck lurched forward as if equally eager to distance itself from the place. The wheels rolled over the uneven ground, crunching gravel and tearing through puddles left by the earlier rain. We were cutting through the night, severing the chains that held us back. As we sped away, I felt a blend of euphoria and anxiety. Our immediate surroundings became a blur, but our mission was crystal clear. The truck's headlights carved tunnels of light through the inky darkness as we put more and more distance between us and Theodore's home. My grip on the steering wheel loosened ever so slightly, but my eyes stayed glued to the road. Iris finally broke the silence from the back seat. I don't know how to thank you both. You have no idea what you just saved me from. Willow turned around to face her, curiosity and concern knitting her brows together. Iris, what was really going on back there? Taking a deep breath, Iris started to open up. Theodore is a controlling and dangerous person. I've been living a nightmare for a long time. I've been planning to leave, gathering a little money here and there, but I didn't know how I would actually do it. When you both showed up, I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is my way out. My heart sank. I glanced at Willow, whose eyes met mine with a mix of horror and gratitude. We were both suddenly aware that our terrifying ordeal was also a timely intervention. I couldn't let you leave without taking my chance, without at least trying, Iris continued. When I saw you searching the house, I knew I had to help you find those keys. I also knew it was my best shot at freedom. So what's the plan now? Willow asked. We need to ensure you're safe for good, and Theodore needs to face the consequences of what he's done, I said. I have a sister in the next state over. She doesn't know the full extent of what I've been through, but she knows I've been trying to get out. She'll help me, I'm sure of it. I nodded as I kept my eyes on the road, now thinking about the journey that lay ahead for each of us. For Iris, it was a chance to rebuild her life, to find safety and freedom. For Willow and me, well, this trip had morphed from a simple getaway into a rescue mission. One that had reminded us of the dark corners that exist in the world, corners that we'd luckily escaped. Then that's where we're headed, I declared. Iris, you're free now, and we'll do everything we can to keep it that way. Willow squeezed my hand and smiled at Iris, who was now crying softly in the back seat. But her tears were different this time. They were tears of relief. We'd not only escaped a dangerous trap, but possibly saved a life in the process. That's the end of today's story. I hope you liked it as much as I did. Have you ever experienced something similar? Share your thoughts in the comments, like and subscribe for new daily stories, and to support our channel. See you soon.